Well, hello, this is your instructor, Russ, and we're now on week 3 of our class, Public Speaking in the Digital Age. And for this week, it's a little bit different than the other weeks. You have no graded assignments that are due. This is supposed to be your practice week. And so there's some things that you can do when you practice that I wanted to highlight for you. And they're found also in the videos that you have for this week. There are 3 of them. And so I'm just going to go through and highlight some of the things that are on those videos, some things that you need to do and to take care of. Now, you've done the ideation process, coming up with ideas. You've done week 2, you've completed the planning part where you've done a planning document. So now you should have an introduction, main points, and a conclusion. So having those, plus having transitions in between each one of those, now you're ready to actually work on the delivery of your presentation. One thing that's different about the delivery in this class, as opposed to being in a live class, is that you have to be using your camera as your audience. So when you have eye contact, it's very important that you look directly at the camera, because here's a big tell that can happen if you're not. I'm going to show you the difference between looking at the camera and even looking slightly down. Because this is up close, we generally will see you, if you're seated like I am, from your chest on up. And if we see that, then we see your eyes much more clearly than we would if it's a live presentation. So if I have something, and let's pretend like this piece of paper here are my notes, and I've got my notes down in front of me, I want you to notice the difference between me looking at you right now, and now I'm looking down at my notes. Look at my eyes. As I'm looking down, now I'm looking up. So it's all right to look down to see what you need to say next, but you need to make sure not to keep your eyes down. Don't keep them here, which means you cannot have complete sentences for your delivery. You cannot have that. You must do your delivery by what's called extemporaneous delivery, which means part of the time you're looking at the audience. In fact, most of the time you're looking at the audience, and some of the time you're looking down at either notes or an outline. That's why I recommend that you use note cards and you reduce your speech. Maybe it's written out, in long form, in complete sentences, but you've got to not deliver it from complete sentences. Also, I have a monitor just to this side of me, and I want you to see what it looks like if I look over to my monitor. Let's say you have a second monitor and you have your notes or outline there. So now I'm looking directly at my camera, looking directly at you, the audience. And now I'm looking off to the side at my monitor. Now I'm looking back to the audience. Now I'm looking off to the side to my monitor. You can see very clearly that you are not looking at your audience. And that's one of the main things that I want to encourage you to do for the best grade possible, is to be looking at the audience. There's 2 times when you should especially be looking at the audience. One of them is at the very, very beginning of the speech. When you begin your recording, don't begin, you push the record button. Don't begin right away. Pause just for a moment, smile in silence, looking at the camera, and then begin talking. And that beginning of your speech, your attention getter, it should be memorized. So you can devote 100% of your eye contact on the camera. That's one of the places that it's vital that you look at your audience and look at the camera in this case. The second place is the very end of your speech during the what I call the memorable ending, or in this class, they say end with a bang. So whatever the last thing is you say, you should not be looking at your notes at that point either. Now, in all the other times in between, you can look down at your notes. And if you want to try to continue talking the last part of the sentence while you look down at your notes and you don't really stop talking, and then you look up and you continue, boy, that's perfect. That's ideal. Not a lot of beginning speakers can do that. So what I recommend that you do is just take a slight pause, look down at your notes. Look back up and now continue talking. Because the only reason I look down at my notes is to see what the next thing is I'm going to say. Not the exact words I'm going to say, because I'm not reading this. But I just need to know what are the ideas I want to say next. What's my next thing that I want to talk about? So only have one or two or short words or a phrase, short little phrase that you glance down at. No complete sentences, because you'll be too tempted and use this as a crutch to read to us. Now, one of the differences between written communication, like writing an essay in an English class, and a speech class is in an English class, you read your essay to the class or to a small group or to another person. And that's a common thing that you would do. But this is not English class. We are studying verbal, not written communication. So what's more important in in oral communication is your ideas are more important than the words that you use. Let me say that again. Your ideas are more important than the words you use. It's more important that you make a positive connection with your audience than you have the exact words that you use, that you make no mistake at all, that you have perfect syntax, all that kind of thing. That's an English or an essay type of written communication rules where you worry more about the words or worry about them just as much as the ideas. But in verbal communication, it's not that way. You can make mistakes. You can say the wrong word. I used to give sermons in church every Sunday morning. I'd get three sermons. I had three services every Sunday, and each one of my sermons were different from the others, and I didn't worry about that. I'm not concerned about the exact words. I'm concerned about conveying ideas. I'm concerned about connecting with my uh, congregation or with my audience. And you do that by looking at them. That's the primary way that you connect with an audience. So you can start this process by having things written out, in long form, in paragraph form, complete sentences, but definitely do not deliver your speech that way. You need to reduce it down, reduce it down. Take a paragraph that you've written and say, what would I call this paragraph? To just bring that paragraph to my memory. And that's what you would write down on your note card. That's what you would write down for notes for yourself. That's extemporaneous style of speaking. It's not just making it up as you go. That's impromptu. It's not memorizing something, writing it all out and memorize. Certainly don't try to memorize your stuff. And it's not doing it, reading something from that's written out complete sentences. So this is kind of in between all of those. We have a little bit of thing to remind you, of what to say. So when you practice this week, one important thing is to record yourself and listen to yourself, watch yourself. You can see different things about your delivery. And that's really what the three videos are all about that you're going to watch for this week. They're all really short. So I really encourage you to watch them maybe more than one time. The first video is all about how to be audience centered in your presentation. You need to remember that even though you may not be seeing the person you're talking to, you're just looking to this impersonal dot, which is your camera, either on your laptop or on your phone or something else. It's really impersonal. In fact, what I do to personalize it is I put a picture up right behind it. I tape a picture of my wife so I can see a person and I can actually be speaking to somebody, look at somebody who's smiling back at me, and it makes me smile and reminds me to smile. So think of your audience. And one of the key things is to speak to your audience. Don't speak at your audience. Don't just act like they're hardly there. When you're reading something, off of a paper, pretend like this is my paper and I'm looking at it, reading. I'm basically ignoring the audience. That's speaking at the audience. It's not speaking to them. When you speak to somebody, when you have a conversation with somebody, you look at them and they look at you and you respond and react back and forth. You have facial expressions and you have enthusiasm in your voice, those kinds of things. So speak to your audience, speak to your camera. Don't be reading to us. Use humor in this. Make this not so serious. So One of the ways you do that is by smiling. It's simple. And just sometimes I put that in my notes for myself. Look up, smile, smile, look at the camera. I put that in there. And you smile not just with your mouth, but with your eyes, open up your eyes. If you never smile, you just look like this. You look like you're half asleep, or you look like you don't really care. And that's the next thing that the first video talks about is having positive energy, enthusiasm. And you use your eyes, you smile, and the power in your voice. You want to speak with a little more, enthusiasm in your voice. And this is called heightened conversation style, where we're just talking to each other, just having a conversation, but you want to have a little more force behind what you're saying. You want to enunciate a little bit more than you normally would. You want to make sure you pronounce your words correctly. That's very important. And so uh, use all of these things when you practice, and when you listen back or watch your video again, then listen for how you sound. Do you sound excited, enthused, or do you sound like you really could care less, or you're scared to death, or whatever? Have somebody you trust listen for you and give you some positive feedback, constructive feedback on how to improve. What does it sound like? The second video is about different delivery techniques, especially using your voice. And one of those things it says is to vary the pace of your speaking. Pace means how fast or how slow that you talk. Now, many of us, most of us, fall into the trap of speaking way too fast for videos and for presentations. And you can tell that when you're listening. If you just barely get one sentence completed and you jump right in to the next sentence, and then you jump right into the next, and then you go to the next, that's way too much. Slow yourself down and have a variety. Sometimes you can go fast, especially if you've got an exciting thing to say and you're getting to the place where you punch out your words. But then there's other times when you slow way down, stretching your words out longer, and sometimes even the volume of things. When you get softer, that low volume sometimes speaks louder than if you could yell. Maybe even speak in kind of a whisper. It's a forced whisper type of thing. And that makes it seem like something's really important, even though you may not, what you say may not be that important. So I recommend you start with kind of a medium pitch, medium pace, go kind of slow, but don't keep that up the same all the time, because you're going to put your audience to sleep. So there's going to be times when you're going to want to slow down a little bit. And then there's times when you going to want to speak louder and faster, and you're going to get going a little bit and more energy and more punch. But don't do that too much, because you can become overbearing, and we don't want you to be overbearing either. There's just a nice variety in your voice. The other second thing that second video talks about is using pauses. This is, again, very, very important, because we're doing this verbally, and audiences, unless they have closed captioning, will not be able to read what you're saying, but they're just listening to you. You've got to give them time to take that idea that you just said, that bite-sized little chunk of what you just said, and you got to give them time to mentally digest that, to understand it. So those pauses, like I'm putting in my sentences right now as an example, is just to give them time to catch their breath, for you to catch your breath, for them to understand what you're saying, and then you continue. The other way that you use pausing in verbal communication is as a transition, as a change to something else. So if you're done with the introduction and you're ready to go into talking about your first main point, in this case, maybe the background of information of your important person you're introducing, then just have a pause. That indicates that you're changing to something else. So you've mentioned that today I'm going to tell you about the background of this important person, and secondly, I'm going to tell you about why that's significant to me, and thirdly, the significance and impact this person's had on other people's lives as well. Let's start by looking at the background of this important person. Now, did you hear the pause, a long pause, right after I said the transition of, well, let's start by looking at the background. Pause, and then you go into it. When you're done with the first main point of the background and you finish that, you say a transitional sentence. We've looked now at the background of this person. Now I want to look at why they are significant to me. Another long pause, you see. So to give people a chance to kind of shift their mind, shift gears and get ready for the next thing that you're talking about, so they can kind of digest that. And the other pause that you want to have is right before the conclusion. So you say, so in conclusion, pause, and then you say your restatement of your main points and your memorable ending. The last part of this is to record yourself and listen to your delivery. Watch it, that's important. But this second video really is about the verbal part of your delivery. And can you understand all of the words? Are you enunciating? Are you pronouncing things correctly? Are you using good articulation? Are you using a good volume that people can hear you? All those kinds of things. The third video is just about practicing. Practice, practice, practice. That's really what it's about. And using notes or key outline is also important practice, because you don't have all the words in front of you. And so you just need to be ready to look at a word and then talk for like a minute or two, and then look down and see another word or phrase, talk for another minute or two. And sometimes that's difficult to do. So it just takes several times to practice it. But the most important thing, as I'm going to end up this video, no reading, please, because that's a definite tell when you're reading something. Now, it is possible. I'm going to show you where my camera is by putting my finger right on it. You can see as my finger gets bigger, you can see right where my camera is. So if I have these notes here and I have a laptop, I can actually fasten. My notes are now right on top of my monitor. So I'm covering up my face. I can't see myself, but I can look at my notes right there, and they're directly underneath of my camera. So now I'm looking directly at the camera, and now I'm looking at my notes, but it's really more difficult to tell that. So that's one little strategy that sometimes you can use, or you can put your typewritten notes, if you have this capability of putting them on the screen and using it, as long as it's right by your camera. Then it's kind of like using a teleprompter, because that's where teleprompters are, is they're located right next to the camera so that people can read off of there and it still looks like they're looking directly at the audience. Well, this is the information for this week. Good luck in your practicing, and let me know if you need any help, if you have any concerns about things. Just a kind of little heads up for week 4, your recording for week 4 is going to be due by the middle of the week. So get all your practicing done now, so that the first part of next week, you can actually do the recording and get it in with plenty of time to spare. So until next week, this is your instructor, Russ, saying so long, and happy video taping yourself, or practicing what you're doing. So we'll see you next time. Thanks.